Salutations, you legend. Where in this big, strange world are you watching from? Mountain Peak or subway seat? Tell me below. And while you're at it, send this video on a journey to your favorite people. It powers up the channel big time. Let's get going. This had to be some kind of sick prank. A cruel, reckless stunt. But who would stoop that low? Who would risk shattering a solid, content marriage just to stir up trouble? That was the thought racing through my head after the first call. It all started around half a year ago. I was at my desk at Apex Office Integrators, preparing for a tedious 2-hour conference call slated for that Wednesday afternoon. As a project manager handling multiple network integration jobs simultaneously, my schedule is packed with calls, briefings, troubleshooting, firefighting. It was still early, just 1:30 p.m., and I was killing time by browsing online for a new digital camera when my phone rang unexpectedly. Without looking away from the screen, I answered automatically. Apex Office Integrators, Mark Foster speaking. "Is this Mark Foster?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes," I said, straightening up slightly. "How can I help you?" "I doubt you can," she replied, "but I might be able to help you." "Help me with what exactly?" I asked, puzzled. "Your wife's name is Brooke, correct?" "Yes," I said, already on edge. "And she's close to someone named Kayla?" "That's right," I confirmed, my pulse ticking up. "Who is this? What's this about?" "I figured you should know something," she said plainly. "If you don't step in soon, your wife might end up cheating on you." My body went cold. "Excuse me? Who are you? Is this supposed to be funny because it's not?" I was so blindsided, I didn't know how to respond. Was this a joke? Should I laugh? Hang up? Lash out? "I can't say who I am," she told me. "I just thought you deserved a chance to prevent something before it happens." I trusted Brooke, knew her. She wasn't the type of woman to stray, not in a million years. So this had to be a lie, a twisted attempt to mess with my head. But why? Why would anyone go this far? If I even began to entertain what this stranger was saying, it would unleash doubt and heartache I wasn't ready to face. Was she playing me, or was she being used by someone else? As much as I wanted to hang up, something kept me on the line. Curiosity, maybe. If I stayed calm and asked the right things, I might learn who was behind this. "What makes you think my wife would cheat?" I asked, masking my anxiety. "I overheard them talking," she said. "Who exactly did you overhear? And what did they say?" "Your wife, her friend Kayla, and another woman named Faith," she answered. "They have lunch together every Wednesday at Vinny's, always the same table near the windows up front. I go there most Wednesdays too. I usually sit nearby. It's dull eating alone, so I listen in sometimes." Kayla had been Brooke's best friend since college. That's how I met them, at a campus party years ago. Kayla was already dating her now husband, Jack. I had just started seeing Brooke. We'd all stayed close ever since, but I couldn't place the name Faith. Brooke had never mentioned anyone by that name before. "And you claim you heard them plotting an affair?" I asked. "Not quite," she replied. "Let me explain. Kayla's been telling Brooke about her own infidelities for a while now, how exciting and freeing they've been. She's been egging your wife on, saying it'd reignite passion, bring back thrill. So far, your wife shut her down, but lately, she's been more open, asking more questions, showing interest. That's why I'm calling you, before it goes too far." "And why exactly are you getting involved?" I asked, trying to make sense of her motive. "Because I hate watching good relationships fall apart thanks to bad advice," she said. "You said Brooke's been more curious lately? Just how long have you been eavesdropping on these lunches?" Her story was starting to fray at the edges, but I held back. I needed to hear more. 6 or 7 weeks now," she said. "So, what are you going to do about it?" There it was, the hook. She wanted me to react. But I wasn't about to give her that, not yet. "I don't know," I said carefully. "I need more details before I decide anything." "Can I call you if I need to follow up?" I asked. "No," she replied flatly. "I'll reach out if there's something else you need to hear." I'd expected that. There was no way she'd give me a number to call back. By then it felt like I was being cornered. And deep down I knew I might not have many moves left. I faced a choice. either go along with her story or dismiss it entirely. After I ended the call, I just sat there, trying to absorb what had just happened. Something about the whole conversation felt wrong, like it had been made up from start to finish. The idea of Brooke being unfaithful, it didn't even seem remotely possible. We'd been together for 13 years, 2 as a couple before tying the knot, and 11 more as husband and wife. And during that entire stretch, Brooke had never given me any reason to doubt her. She'd always gone out of her way to prove her love, thoughtful gestures, kind words, constant support. And I'd given her the same level of devotion in return. There were other reasons I couldn't buy into the accusation. Our 2 kids, Kyle and Molly. Kyle's 6 years old, Molly just turned 8. Brooke would never jeopardize their well-being or risk fracturing our home. So I chalked it up to someone's sick idea of a prank. Still, I had to shift gears. A long video meeting was about to start, and I couldn't afford to be distracted. The issues raised during the call were intense enough to take over my thoughts, which thankfully gave me a break from the unease that had settled in earlier, at least for a while. But once I walked out of the office and slid into the driver's seat, that feeling came roaring back. At first, I thought I'd come clean with Brooke that evening, just lay it all out. But somewhere along the drive home, I changed my mind. There was no need to upset her, not until I had more concrete information. If someone was playing games, I'd figure it out before dragging her into it. That night, my mind kept looping the same questions. Should I tell her now, or wait? But in the end, the opportunity never came up. The kids needed help with schoolwork, and by the time they were tucked in, I got pulled into a call with one of my California project leads. While I was still on the line, Brooke walked into the room, kissed me on the cheek, and whispered that she was heading to bed. By the time I finished the call, she was already asleep. Thursday was jam-packed with meetings and assignments, which made it easier to push everything else aside. I briefly wondered in the morning if the caller would try again, but by the time lunch rolled around, I hadn't thought about it once. No calls came that day. Nothing unusual happened. Friday passed without a hitch, too. By then, the whole situation had started to feel like a strange, blurry memory, like something I might have imagined. So I let it go, or at least pushed it deep enough down that I didn't have to think about it anymore. The incident didn't resurface in my mind until the following Wednesday. That morning went smoothly, like clockwork, and I had high hopes for a productive afternoon. Then Jake Peterson showed up at my office. Jake runs our Northeast operations, and we were in the middle of reviewing recurring project issues and throwing around possible fixes when my phone rang. "Mark Foster," I answered. "Hey, Mark, it's me again," said the familiar voice I instantly recognized. "Hold on a second," I replied. "I've got someone with me." Jake smiled and stood. "All good," he said. On his way out, he joked, "That your girlfriend?" and laughed as he closed the door behind him. "I'm back," I said into the phone. "You didn't do anything, did you?" she said, emotionless. "What are you talking about?" "You didn't try to stop your wife," she replied coldly. The comment hit me like a punch. I couldn't even respond at first. "I haven't made up my mind about any of this," I admitted. "Is there something else I should know?" "Do you know what day it is?" she asked. "Yes," I said, confused by the question. "Exactly. It's Wednesday, and you forgot again that your wife had lunch with her friends today." A tight, uneasy feeling settled in my gut. I forced myself to stay composed. "Were you listening to their conversation?" "I was. And you really need to make a move soon. Otherwise, it might be too late." "Why are you doing this?" I asked. This time, Brooke was the one who brought it up, not Kayla. That couldn't be. Brooke wouldn't even hint at something like that. I felt a wave of anger building. How was I supposed to make sense of any of this if I didn't even know who I was talking to? "What exactly did Brooke say?" I asked. "She asked Kayla if she'd gone on another one of her little secret dates lately." "That doesn't mean Brooke's cheating," I said, trying to make sense of it all. "I know it's hard to accept," she said, "but you need to listen to me, or things are going to spiral." "Can we meet face to face?" I asked, hoping it would help clarify things. "No," she replied. "I'll call again, but you need to deal with this, and soon." Before I could press her further, the call ended. I was boiling. There was no way I could focus after that, so I packed up and headed out early. Brooke's Wednesday routine never changed. And by late, I didn't mean anything unusual, just her standard schedule. She picks up Kyle and Molly from school. Kyle goes to Brooke's mom's place, and Molly gets dropped off for her brownie meeting. Because Brooke serves as the assistant leader of the troop, she always stays until the final moments of every meeting. Afterward, she picks up Kyle, and the three of us typically walk through the front door right around 6 in the evening. That Wednesday was different. I got back by 3:30 p.m., went directly to my office, and shut the door behind me. I pulled out a legal pad and started analyzing the situation. Project management is my profession. I'm paid to untangle complications and keep operations on track. Whenever a problem arises, my first instinct is always the same: grab a pencil and paper and start deconstructing the issue. I analyze every component, trace back to the origin, and search for an actionable fix. This approach has always worked for me, and naturally, it's the one I turn to now. I began by jotting down what the anonymous caller had said. According to them, Kayla had been openly discussing her infidelity. Not only that, but she had also been pushing Brooke to have an affair herself. The caller claimed Brooke hadn't agreed, but she appeared intrigued. These conversations had apparently been ongoing for 6 weeks or more. I then made a list of reasons the story didn't sit right with me. Brooke just isn't the kind of person who would cheat. I've known Kayla for as long as I've known Brooke, and I find it hard to believe she'd be unfaithful to her husband, Jack. Although I remembered Brooke and Kayla used to have weekly lunch dates, I hadn't heard her mention one in so long that I suspected they had stopped altogether. The caller mentioned someone named Faith, a name I'd never heard Brooke bring up. The idea that someone managed to sit close enough to eavesdrop for 6 or 7 straight weeks was implausible. What are the chances that the same group of 3 women always took the same table, and the same observer happened to secure the next table every time without raising suspicion? Brooke is highly observant. If someone were hovering around, clearly trying to listen in, she would have noticed. And if she suspected she was being watched, she would have either switched seats or chosen a different place altogether. After writing that list, I began brainstorming potential explanations for the phone call. One of my friends might have been pulling a prank. Maybe it was a joke from one of Brooke's friends. It could have come from someone who didn't like me and wanted to mess with my head. Possibly it was someone harboring resentment toward Brooke. An ex of mine might have wanted to stir up trouble. Maybe it was someone from Brooke's past, a former boyfriend, trying to cause problems. A man who developed feelings for Brooke and wanted to sabotage us. A woman who had a thing for me and was trying to drive a wedge between us. Or a variation of either. Someone, regardless of gender, with romantic feelings toward either of us and a desire to interfere. We could have simply been the unlucky targets of an elaborate hoax by a stranger. Wild as it sounded, I even considered the possibility of us being unwilling participants in a hidden camera show designed to test people's reactions to fake drama. That last one felt far-fetched, but I had started scraping the bottom of the barrel for ideas. There were several more scenarios on the list, each one increasingly absurd, but I can't even remember what they were now. Then came the final entry on the page. The caller might have been telling the truth, and Brooke might actually be entertaining the idea of having an affair. Over the next hour, I examined every possibility, shifting entries up and down the list based on how plausible they seemed. Immediately, I dismissed the idea that our friends were behind it. Neither mine nor Brooke's circle would stoop that low. The theory of a malicious prank from an enemy didn't hold either. Sure, I wasn't universally liked, but nobody hated me enough to orchestrate something this elaborate. The same went for Brooke. She didn't carry that kind of emotional baggage. I'd only had 2 serious relationships before meeting Brooke, and both had ended cleanly. Of Brooke's exes, I'd only met one, and that relationship had ended long before I ever entered the picture. Romantic obsession, regardless of gender, didn't strike me as a likely explanation either. I reviewed the list again, 4 times in total, making absolutely sure I hadn't overlooked something obvious. By the end, the theory that seemed least implausible, though still bizarre, was the one about us being part of a reality TV prank. Right behind that, and far more painful to consider, was the chance that the anonymous caller had been completely honest, and that Brooke was truly toying with the idea of cheating. I hated both options. Neither one felt right. I knew those so-called reality shows weren't legitimate. They were staged, scripted nonsense. Still, nothing else on my list felt any more convincing. And so I was right back where I started. Either the caller made the whole thing up, or she was telling the truth. If it was a fabrication, I needed to find out who was behind it and why. If it was the truth, and I still hadn't accepted that it was, then my marriage could be on the brink of collapse. To find out, I'd have to talk to Brooke. But I'd need to be extremely cautious. One wrong move, one sign that I was suspicious, and everything could change. If Brooke was indeed guiltless, as I truly believed, then even the slightest indication that I didn't trust her could cut her deeply. On the other hand, if the anonymous tip had been accurate and she picked up on my subtle questioning, she might guess that someone had clued me in, and if that happened, the truth might slip further from my reach. Sure, being confronted might deter her if she had considered being unfaithful, but I'd never really know if that thought had ever even crossed her mind. To avoid rousing suspicion, I had to proceed carefully. I'd need to gather clues gradually, letting the facts surface piece by piece. The moment I heard the garage door start to lift, I crumpled and discarded my notes. Then I headed to the kitchen to greet my wife and kids as they stepped inside. As soon as the door swung open, Kyle came barreling in, gave my hip a playful tap, and beamed. "Hey, Dad, can I watch TV?" "Go ahead," I replied with a smile. "Daddy, look what I made at Brownie's!" Molly cried, running toward me with bubbling enthusiasm. She held out several little pins, each with a tiny candle affixed to it. "You light the candle," she said proudly, "and it makes the pin catch fire. It's supposed to help start a fire in the fireplace. Isn't that cool?" "That's really clever, sweetheart," I told her. "We'll definitely try them out next time we use the fireplace this winter." Her eyes sparkled at the praise, and she skipped off to join Kyle in front of the television. About 45 minutes later, we sat down together for dinner. Spaghetti tonight. "So how was your day?" Brooke asked. "Nothing too exciting," I answered. "Everything's been running pretty smoothly. No crises to handle." "If you do need to start a fire," Molly chimed in mischievously, "you can use one of my pins." "I'll keep that in mind, Shell," I said. "If I ever want to set my work on fire, your invention will be the first thing I reach for." She giggled, twirling a forkful of noodles. I turned to Brooke and asked as casually as I could, "Seen Kayla lately?" "I actually had lunch with her this afternoon," she replied. "Why do you ask?" "Really?" I said, feigning surprise. "I didn't know you two still met up." "We've kept up our Wednesday lunches," Brooke said. "But what made you think of her?" "It's just that you haven't mentioned her in a while, and it's been almost a year since we saw Kayla and Jack. I thought maybe we could all get dinner together sometime." "That sounds great," she replied. "I'll call Kayla and see if they're free this weekend." That comment lined up with what I'd been told. Brooke and Kayla still met weekly. I decided to probe just a bit more. "So it's every Wednesday, huh? Where do you usually go?" "There's this little Italian restaurant called Vinny's over at the Appian Way shopping plaza," she said. I knew the center she meant. A grocery store, a drugstore, a few boutiques, a cafe, and a Domino's. But I'd never heard of a place called Vinny's. I hadn't been to that strip mall in years. "You always go there?" I asked. "Most of the time. The food's good and inexpensive. They do a lot of takeout, so it's easy to find a table. And the location works well for all of us." All of us. That phrase gave me pause. It was another piece fitting into the puzzle the anonymous caller had started. "All of you? I thought it was just you and Kayla." "Kayla's old roommate from college, Faye, works with her now. She joins us sometimes." "Do I know her?" I asked, trying not to sound too interested. "I don't think so. Faye lived with Kayla for a couple of years, but she graduated before you came around." "So it's the three of you every week," I said. "Maybe I'll come with you one day." I studied her face closely as I said it. "That'd be nice, we'd enjoy that," she said warmly. "Oh, definitely," I joked. "I'm sure the ladies would love it if one of the husbands showed up to spoil the venting session." Brooke laughed. "We'd complain about you whether you're there or not. I'll just say it to your face instead." After we ate, we tackled the kitchen cleanup together, then got the kids ready for bed. The part of the evening I cherished most came afterward, when we'd relax together on the couch. Brooke would nestle in beside me, her head resting gently on my shoulder. Eventually, she'd stretch out and lay her head in my lap. I'd run my fingers through her hair, softly brushing her face until she drifted off to sleep. I loved those quiet moments watching her sleep. But that night they never came. A seed of suspicion had been planted, and no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, it had started to grow. Thursday didn't bring much relief. The whole day felt heavy. Every time the phone rang, my stomach tightened, bracing for that anonymous voice. But every call was just business. One of them was from Tom, the project manager in our Denver office. We were deep into a massive network migration for a major client headquartered there. The initiative had been underway for over a year and was moving along steadily. Tom asked if I could fly out for the upcoming quarterly review with the client. I told him I'd get in touch with the VP at EAT to line up a meeting sometime in the next couple of weeks. I had a strong professional rapport with the VP, and truthfully, I was looking forward to the trip. Most of my trips ran about 4 days. I'd leave early on the first morning, link up with Tom, and catch up on how the project was progressing, along with what was coming next on the timeline. He'd usually walk me through any immediate obstacles or worries, and flag anything he thought I should raise in my upcoming sit-down with the VP. The second day always belonged to Tom's team. I'd spend time listening, asking questions, and collecting their input. Day 3 was reserved for my one-on-one with the vice president. Those meetings typically lasted about an hour, ending with a round of golf and then dinner. On the 4th day, I'd fly back home to Richmond. That evening, Brooke reminded me we had dinner plans with Kayla and Jack on Saturday, and we slipped back into our nightly routine like always. Friday rushed past like a storm. I was juggling 3 different conference calls and had to manage a situation that came up at the Tulsa site. Most of the day was spent calming the client, assuring them the problem would be solved before the end of the day and that there'd be no delay to the schedule. By the time I finally got home that Friday night, the strange phone call from earlier in the week had almost completely slipped from my memory. As I stepped through the door, Brooke greeted me with a kiss. "Dinner will be ready in about 20 minutes, she said. "The kids are upstairs playing, so we've got a few quiet minutes. Want something to drink?" I'd been craving an ice-cold beer all the way home. "Sit down, I'll bring it to you," she offered. That was just Brooke, consistently thoughtful and warm. I never took her for granted, and I always tried to show her the same care in return. I'd barely settled into my favorite chair when she brought our drinks into the living room. She set them on the table and leaned in close. "I was thinking about you today," she whispered. I knew exactly what she was implying. Even after all these years, the spark between us still hadn't dulled. After a shared laugh and a private moment, I offered to pour us some wine. She agreed, and I filled our glasses. We sipped quietly for a while. Then Brooke turned to me, eyes deep and serious. "Mark, I've been thinking a lot about something lately," she began. "What would you think about having another baby?" My eyebrows lifted. "You're serious?" She nodded. "I'm 33. If we wait a few more years, it could be tougher. Kyle's almost 7. If we're going to do this, now feels right." "If it's what you really want, then yeah, let's go for it," I told her. "Great," she said. "So can I stop taking the pill tomorrow and start trying?" I kissed her lightly on the nose. "Yes, and maybe we should get a little practice in tonight, don't you think?" She smiled wide. "Definitely." "Boy or girl?" she asked playfully. What would you prefer?" "How about one of each?" I teased. "Be serious," she said. "Honestly? As long as the baby's healthy, I don't care." "That's the perfect answer," she replied. Later, after she had fallen asleep beside me, I stared up at the ceiling, reflecting on the idea of another child. But instead of comfort, something unsettled in me began to stir. Eventually, sleep came, but my dreams were twisted. In them, Brooke had been unfaithful and was now pregnant, with someone else's child. I woke with a start, grateful it was only a dream. Still, a low, persistent worry had taken root. I thought about revisiting the strange phone calls, but decided against it. Telling Brooke could complicate things. She'd probably share it with Kayla, and who knows where it would go from there. I figured if the person on the other end of the call realized I hadn't fallen for their game and had kept it to myself, they'd just move on. But then again, what if they weren't lying? I couldn't ignore that chance. Letting it go wasn't an option anymore. I needed the truth. The phone stayed silent that entire week, but the lack of calls didn't bring any peace. If anything, I became more restless. By the time Saturday evening rolled around and Brooke and I were getting ready to go out with Kayla and Jack, I hoped the night might distract me from the growing anxiety. Dinner was lovely. Great food, easy conversation. I kept a quiet eye on Kayla and Jack throughout the evening. They seemed perfectly at ease. No tension, no strange looks, no signs of anything being out of place. Even Brooke and Kayla acted completely normal. Nothing off, no red flags. Everything seemed fine, yet the unease within me only deepened. Instead of clarity, I felt a sinking heaviness I couldn't explain. That night, back at home, in the hush that followed the evening out, Brooke leaned in and whispered softly in my ear. "I've been thinking about you today," she murmured. "It's time to go make that baby." I followed her upstairs, ready to give her everything I had. Right after we were done, Brooke turned to me and said, "You know I can't get pregnant this soon, right? I only stopped taking the pill 2 days ago." "I know," I told her. She leaned in and kissed me. "What do you say we give it another go tomorrow night?" I didn't hesitate to say yes. By Monday morning, I was back at my desk when an idea started forming. If the mysterious caller had been at the same place where Brooke regularly met Kayla for lunch on Wednesdays, maybe all I needed to do was show up there and keep an eye out. But charging in without a plan was risky. I needed to be smart. I'd already casually mentioned joining Brooke for lunch one of these weeks, and she hadn't objected, so showing up wouldn't necessarily raise flags. Still, if the caller spotted me before I figured out who she was, she might disappear, and that'd be it. I wasn't even sure if she knew what I looked like. Maybe she did. Maybe she'd seen me near the restaurant before. Later that same day, I took a longer lunch than usual and drove to Appian Way to survey Vinnie's. Blending in while going inside wasn't going to happen, but across the street was a parking lot with a partial fence, just enough to keep my car mostly hidden while still offering a good line of sight to the restaurant's entrance. That night, I tucked a pair of binoculars into my car so I'd be ready come Wednesday. Tuesday flew by in a blur of meetings and deadlines. It kept me somewhat distracted, but not enough to curb the restlessness. I hated waiting, but I had no choice. By 11 a.m. Wednesday, I slipped out of the office and drove straight to the same lot. Luckily, the space behind the fence was still available. I pulled in, double-checked that no one was paying attention, and reached for the binoculars. From where I sat, I could see the restaurant's front window fairly well, although the sun's glare made it tough to make out details inside. With nothing else to do, I opened the sandwich I'd packed and drank my soda, all while keeping my eyes locked on the door. At 12:05 sharp, Brooke showed up with Kayla and a third woman I briefly mistook for Faye. I lifted the binoculars and focused on the window. The three of them had taken a table right next to the glass, just like the caller had described. There was another table close by, but from my vantage point, I couldn't tell if anyone was sitting there. I watched for the next 45 minutes as people came and went, most of them grabbing takeout and leaving. As far as I could tell, nobody ever took the seat next to theirs. Eventually, Brooke and the others got up and left. I stayed put for a few more minutes to see if anyone trailed behind them. No one did. That left a nagging question. Had the caller even been there? Or had she spotted me first and slipped out unnoticed? I rushed back to the office anyway, just in case she called. Even though there was no real reason to believe she knew my routine, I wanted everything to look normal. I stepped into my office just as the phone started ringing. "Apex Office Integrators, Mark Foster," I said. "You're starting to worry me, Mark," the familiar voice said without delay. "You still haven't done anything about your wife." "How do you know that?" I asked. "Because I listened to what she said at lunch," she replied. "You were listening again today?" "Of course, it's the only excitement I get these days. But you need to start taking this seriously. I hate being the bearer of bad news, but I can't seem to stop." "Then why keep calling me?" I asked. "Maybe because it makes me feel less guilty, like I'm helping in some weird way. But whether you want to believe it or not, things are heading in a dangerous direction." What are you talking about? I asked. Today, Brooke told Kayla that the next time you're out of town, she plans to finally go through with her little affair. And Kayla? She encouraged it. Said she even knew two guys perfect for a double date. A chill ran up my spine. I didn't know what to believe anymore. I wanted to chalk it all up to paranoia or lies, but the puzzle pieces were starting to line up too well to ignore. Are you going to do something about this or just let it play out? She snapped, cutting into my thoughts. If you're not going to take action, just tell me, so I can stop caring. I'll deal with it, I said, my voice flat. Then I slammed the receiver back into place. On the drive home, I replayed everything in my mind. Something was off, I was sure of it now. But I still wasn't ready to pin it all on Brooke. Maybe I just didn't want to believe she could be at the heart of it. I was almost ready to dismiss the anonymous caller as someone overblowing things. Until dinner, when Brooke said something that hit like a sucker punch. We were chatting with the kids about their school day when she suddenly turned to me and asked, "Don't you have that Denver trip coming up soon?" I had planned a trip for the following week, but with everything else clouding my thoughts, it slipped my mind to mention it to Brooke. What really rattled me was how the subject came up. Someone, it seemed, had overheard Brooke telling Kayla that the next time I was out of town, she was going to cheat, and now, without any hint of concern, she was casually asking if I had a Denver trip on the horizon. Was it an unfortunate coincidence or something calculated? I couldn't tell. I was trying my hardest to shake the thought when Brooke turned to me with a question that hit even harder. Was tonight the night we'd start trying for a baby? I couldn't do it. I told her I wasn't feeling well. That Thursday morning, I made a choice I never thought I'd be capable of making. I scheduled an appointment with a private investigator. We set the meeting for Friday morning. Right after that, I contacted my client in Denver and delayed the trip by a week. I had to get answers before leaving town. Later that night, I pulled out a few snapshots of Brooke from one of our old photo albums. I needed something to give the investigator. At 9:30 the next morning, I stepped into the office of the AAA Detective Agency. I reminded myself not to assume the name meant anything about their skills. It probably just meant they showed up early in the directory. That tactic worked. They were third on the list. I chose them because I don't trust the first name I see, and the second one didn't even answer their phone. I was shown into Brian Dunstan's office, where I spent 20 minutes laying out everything in detail and handed over the photos. "She's very good looking," he remarked. The way he said it made my skin crawl. I didn't like him already. There was something off-putting about a man who earned his living from other people's heartbreak. Sure, it might be a profitable business, but it wasn't one I could admire. "Yes, she is," I said, my tone clipped. "Let me be clear about what I expect. First and foremost, this has to be handled discreetly. She can't know she's being watched." "Absolutely, Mr. Foster," he replied smoothly. "We're professionals. She'll never know. If she's with someone, romantically or sexually, I want undeniable proof. Photos, video, audio, whatever it takes. It just has to be clear." "You've got it, Mr. Foster. If there's anything going on, we'll catch it." "I want everything you find by next Thursday." "No problem. How about you come by at 3 that afternoon? We'll have a full report ready for you." 3 o'clock Thursday, I'll be here, I said, standing up. As I left Dunstan's office, I couldn't shake a heavy sense of dread. The days that followed blurred together. Around Brooke, I kept everything as normal as possible. No odd behavior, no tension. I didn't want her catching on. I didn't want the kids noticing either. I even maintained our physical connection. We made love 4 out of the 7 nights that week. On Wednesday afternoon, I sat in my office, heart pounding, waiting for a call. At 1:30 p.m., the phone rang. "Have you done anything yet?" she asked immediately after I picked up. "Everything's under control," I replied evenly. "What exactly are you doing?" "I can't go into detail," I said. "Just trust that everything will be resolved by the weekend." She pressed for more, but I wouldn't say anything else. I ended the call. At exactly 3 p.m. on Thursday, I returned to Dunstan's office. "Mr. Foster, I'm sorry, but the news isn't good," he said as I sat down. "We caught her and we've got everything you need to see." He handed me a DVD. "All the evidence is on here. It's legally obtained, nothing invasive. Everything was recorded in public settings." We've got a DVD player in the next room if you'd prefer to watch it now, he offered. I'd rather take it home and view it privately, I told him. Just give me the bill. I'll settle it on my way out. Back at my office, I locked the door, slid the disc into my laptop, and hit play. Dunstan hadn't been exaggerating. The evidence was crystal clear. The first clip, stamped Monday at 9 p.m., showed Brooke in a bar booth beside a man I didn't recognize. He had his arm around her, and they kissed several times before getting up to dance. On the dance floor, the two of them looked completely wrapped up in each other. The video then jumped to 10:15 p.m., showing Brooke climbing into a car with the same man. At precisely 11:05 p.m., the camera captured the couple entering a motel room at the downtown Ramada Inn. By 1:25 a.m., they re-emerged and headed back to the bar. There, she slid behind the wheel of her car and drove off, returning to her own place. The next significant moment took place Wednesday morning at 9:07. This time, the woman appeared in a local diner, seated across from a different man as they shared breakfast. Soon after, the footage showed a vehicle being discreetly followed by the private investigator, likely the man's car. Initially, it looked like she wasn't inside, no sign of her above the seatbacks. But as the vehicle pulled into the empty lot of an abandoned warehouse, her face briefly appeared. The camera shifted to a long-range view of the parked car, positioned a short distance away. From that vantage point, it was impossible to see who was inside. The lens slowly zoomed in. Eventually, it revealed a man in the back seat, clearly enjoying himself. That moment sealed it. I transferred the footage onto my computer, burned a copy onto a fresh DVD, and then wiped the original from the system. After slipping the disc into a plastic sleeve, I placed it inside a large manila envelope. The original was stored securely in the office safe. With that done, I headed out to carry out what I had dreaded most. Later that day, I got home about 20 minutes before Brooke. As soon as the garage door lifted, Kyle and Molly burst into the kitchen, too excited to even say hello. Brooke walked in behind them, smiling warmly. "Back earlier than usual," she said, pleasantly surprised. "Getting ready for some baby making," I joked. She laughed. "Great timing. You've been on my mind all day." "You checked the mail?" "Nope, totally forgot. I'll go now." "Don't worry about it, I'll get it," I told her. "Can't have you tiring out my future all-stars with errands." She returned a couple minutes later with the usual: ads, credit card pitches, housing brochures, and one big manila envelope. She handed it over after sorting through the stack and tossing the rest onto the coffee table. "This one's for you. No return address," she said. I didn't reply. I just took the envelope, placed it beside me on the couch, and asked, "Want a beer?" Sure, that'd be great. I headed into the kitchen, grabbed 2 beers, and brought them back. I gave her one and eased into the couch next to her. We made small talk about work and the kids until she suddenly asked, "Aren't you the least bit curious about that envelope?" "Probably just more junk," I shrugged. "Maybe," she said. "Still, wouldn't hurt to check." I picked it up and began peeling it open just as the phone rang. Brooke stood and answered it. I listened from the couch. "Hello? Oh, hey." A short silence. "You're joking. Wait, you're serious?" She walked into the kitchen, her voice fading beyond earshot. The call didn't last long, maybe 10 minutes. When she came back, she looked tense. "I need to go meet Kayla. Something's up." She sounded shaken. "Shaken how? What's wrong?" "I'm not totally sure." She was too upset to explain. "Can you handle dinner and keep an eye on the kids?" "Of course, not my first rodeo." "I know. Sorry. I just feel uneasy about this." She grabbed her purse and keys. "I'll be back as soon as I can. Don't wait up." "Take care of her," I said softly. Once she was gone, I found Kyle and Molly in the family room, glued to the TV. "Mom had to head out, so I'm on dinner duty," I announced. "2 choices tonight, liver and onions or McDonald's. What's it gonna be?" Kyle instantly chanted, "McDonald's! McDonald's! McDonald's!" on repeat. Molly, always quick with a joke, added, "Tough call. I do love liver, but let's make it easy on you. McDonald's it is." I scooped her up, twirled her overhead, gently set her down, and launched into a tickle attack. "You silly goose," I said, grinning. Kyle grabbed my arm. My turn! I want to fly like Molly. So I gave him a lift of his own, followed by more giggles and tickling. The room was filled with nothing but laughter and love. The three of us stopped by McDonald's for a quick dinner and made it back home in under an hour. As soon as we walked through the front door, I told the kids to head upstairs and start their bedtime routine. By 8 o'clock, they were both in bed. Kyle had already nodded off, and I sat beside Molly while she told me all about her day at school. I stayed with her until she finished, gave her a kiss on the forehead, turned off the lights, and quietly stepped out of her room. Down in the living room, I grabbed a cold beer from the fridge, sank into the couch, and took a slow sip. Then I reached for the large envelope sitting on the coffee table and tore it open. I turned it upside down, letting the contents spill out in a neat pile. Inside were 2 identical schedules for my upcoming trip to Denver, flight details, hotel information, and a rental car reservation. I took one of the copies and pinned it to the fridge with the banana-shaped magnet. The rest of the paperwork went straight into my briefcase. With that done, I picked up a copy of Sports Illustrated and started leafing through it. It was nearly midnight when Brooke came through the door. The expression on her face told me something serious had happened with Kayla, something that had clearly shaken her. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Did something happen with Kayla?" "Let me get a beer first," she said. "Then I'll tell you everything." "You sure you want to talk about it?" "I need to," she said, her voice steady. Brooke returned with a beer in hand and sat down beside me. "All right," I said. "Just start from the beginning. What exactly happened?" She exhaled, long and heavy, before speaking. "Jack kicked her out tonight." "You're kidding, he actually threw her out?" "She got home from work around 6:30. He was already there waiting. He handed her a packed bag and told her to get out." "Jesus! Is there someone else in the picture? Is that why he did it?" "No," Brooke said. "You know Jack, he's not that kind of guy." I paused, then said quietly, "It's Kayla, isn't it? She cheated?" Brooke looked down. "Yeah, he found out about the affair." "Unbelievable. What the hell is wrong with her? Jack's a decent guy. I thought she truly cared about him." "She does care," Brooke said softly. "Then how do you explain what she did?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't understand it either. I just feel awful for her." "You feel bad for her? What about Jack? He's the one who got betrayed." "I know," she replied. "But did he have to throw her out like that? He hit her. That's not okay." "Wait, he hit her?" "Yeah, called her a whore and slapped her." "That's all?" "What do you mean, that's all?" she asked, stunned. "He hit her. That crosses a line. Are you seriously defending her right now? She cheated on someone who loved her. He's crushed. If you ever did that to me, I'm not sure I'd have handled it any better." "I'm not excusing what she did," Brooke said. "I just think Jack should have let her talk before kicking her out." "Talk about what? Try to justify sleeping around?" I snapped. "Why are you taking her side?" "Why are you this angry?" Brooke shot back. "Because I feel for Jack. If it had been him who cheated, you wouldn't be this forgiving." Brooke opened her mouth, then stopped herself. "You're her best friend," I continued. "You two have lunch every week. Don't tell me you didn't know she was seeing someone else." She stared at me. "What are you saying?" "Brooke, please, just be honest with me. Did you know?" She looked away and said quietly, "Yes." "How long?" "A few months." "Did you try to stop her? Say anything at all?" "I didn't know how to bring it up," she admitted. "So I kept quiet." "Then you let it happen," I said coldly. "You didn't stop her, you gave her silence." "I didn't support it," she insisted. "I hated it. I just didn't know what to say." "Then part of what happened tonight is on you," I said, my voice sharper than I expected. Brooke looked stunned. "How can you blame me for this? I didn't make her cheat." "No," I said. "But you didn't try to stop her either. And now you're defending her after she's been caught. I don't even know who you are anymore. Weren't you always the one preaching about how vital loyalty is in a marriage? Or does that principle only extend to spouses, not your closest friends?" "Yes, Kayla made a serious mistake. She's my friend, and I can't just walk away when she's clearly in pain. She's hurting badly, but have you stopped to think about Jack? Does it ever cross your mind that he might be suffering too? This situation isn't just about Kayla and Jack, it's rippling through everyone in their lives. Can't you see how it's affecting us now? I said, rising from the couch. I'm going to bed. Brooke didn't say a word. Lying under the covers later, I kept replaying the argument. I was angry at her for overlooking the chaos Kayla had caused, and angry at myself for losing control. Still, maybe it gave her something to think about. If she had any illusions about shaking up her life with an affair, this likely killed them. When she finally slipped into bed half an hour later, I pretended to be asleep. I didn't want another round. The mood in the house was noticeably frostier in the following days. On Monday morning, I caught an early flight to Denver. I made up my mind not to be the one to reach out first. But at 9 p.m., which was 11 back in Richmond, Brooke called. "Why didn't you call to let me know you got in?" she asked. "I figured you didn't want to talk," I replied. She paused for a moment before saying, "I don't care what you thought. You should have called anyway." "You're right, I'm sorry. I won't let it happen again." The conversation didn't last long. She said she just wanted to make sure I'd landed safely before heading to bed. Before hanging up, she reminded me to call early the next morning so I could speak to the kids. In the days that followed, things eased up a bit between us. Our conversations were lighter, and we both consciously avoided bringing up Kayla and Jack. My return flight on Thursday was due to arrive just after 7 p.m. Before leaving Denver, I gave Brooke a quick call to confirm my arrival time. "Can you grab something for dinner on the way back?" she asked. "I'm taking the kids out to eat with my parents. You'll miss it." "No problem," I said. "I'll see you at home." After touching down on time, I stopped at a small grill I liked. Great place, known for their burgers. As I walked in, I spotted Jack at the bar pouring himself a drink. I figured I'd check in on him, see how he was managing. By the time I got over there, he had already moved to a booth. And to my surprise, he wasn't alone. He was sitting across from a woman I didn't recognize. "Hey, Jack, how's it going?" I asked. "Mark, good to see you. Hanging in there, as well as anyone could be," he said. "Mark, this is Faye. Faye, meet Mark." "Nice to meet you, Faye," I said. "If it weren't for her, I don't know where I'd be right now," Jack added. "Well, then I'm very glad to meet you," I replied. We were just having a drink before grabbing dinner. "Want to join us for one?" Jack offered. I ordered a beer and pulled up a chair at the edge of the booth. No one brought up Kayla or what had happened. Jack mostly chatted about Faye, how they'd known each other since college. He reminisced about their school days and then asked how Brooke and the kids were doing. About 20 minutes in, he excused himself to go to the restroom. Once he was gone, Faye turned to me with a smile. "Faye, huh? That's short for Faith, right?" I asked. "You got it," she said. "Well, I've got to say, you've done an impressive job," I told her. "That's kind of my thing, I fix problems," she replied. "So, how long have you been in love with him?" I asked. "Since college," she answered without hesitation. "You were Kayla's roommate back then, weren't you?" "Yeah, sharp memory," she said. "So you used me to get Kayla out of the way," I said. "I did," she confessed. "I'm sorry. I couldn't pull it off on my own. I didn't want Kayla to find out I was behind it, and I couldn't bring myself to be the one to tell Jack his wife was cheating." "And you're okay with that? With what you did?" I asked. "I don't feel guilty about it," she said. "Look, if Kayla hadn't started sleeping around, I would have stayed in the background forever. I never set out to hurt either of them. But when she started bragging about her affairs, I had to step in, and why shouldn't I get something out of it?" "But why drag Brooke and me into it?" I asked. "There was no one else I could count on," she said. "I'm sorry I involved you, but I couldn't just sit back and watch her destroy Jack." "Why would you think I'd tip off Jack about Kayla cheating?" I asked. She looked at me calmly. "I've been having lunch with your wife once a week for more than a year now. You come up in nearly every conversation. She always talks about you like you're this pillar of integrity. From the way she describes you, I knew you'd never ignore what Kayla was doing. I figured it was only a matter of time before Jack found out." "You went about it cleverly, by the way," she added. "Jack believes some friend's wife hired a PI and mailed him the report anonymously." "I've got one more question," I said slowly. "You weren't honest about Brooke, were you? You told me Brooke supported Kayla's affair." "I lied," she confessed without hesitation. "I only said that to make sure you'd talk to me. Brooke was clearly disturbed by the whole thing, but I never told her the full story. We talked about it a few times. She kept hoping Kayla would come to her senses and end it. So Brooke didn't encourage her at all? I asked again, wanting to be sure. Kayla once tried to get her to join in, Faye said, but Brooke shut her down hard. That's what gave me the idea to reach out to you. I stretched the truth, but it all came from Kayla's own suggestion. I couldn't decide whether to be angry with Faye or admire her boldness. She had somehow managed to warn Jack about Kayla's infidelity and stayed in his life to offer support afterward. Before I could reply, I spotted Jack making his way back from the restroom. We finished our drinks, and as they were about to leave, Jack looked at me with a quiet intensity. I have no idea what comes next for me, but I hope you and Brooke still consider me a friend. Of course, Jack, I told him sincerely. Nice meeting you, Mark, Faye added, her smile faint but unmistakably loaded with meaning. You too, I replied. After they left, I ordered a burger, fries, and another beer. As I ate, an unexpected feeling settled over me, relief. It took me a moment to figure out why. The pressure and unease that had been building over the past several weeks had finally lifted. Even though I had always believed Brooke would never be unfaithful, part of me had worried, just a little. But when Faye told me that Brooke not only turned down Kayla's idea, but shut it down immediately, something inside me clicked. That realization made every bite of my meal taste better than it had any right to. When I finished, I called Brooke to tell her I was on my way home. She said she was just leaving her parents' house and would be back in about half an hour. That 30 minutes suddenly felt endless. I got home 15 minutes before she did. I couldn't relax. I was still processing everything Faye had said. I felt a storm brewing inside me, guilt, love, hope, all tangled together. I owed Brooke an apology. For the way I behaved that night, Jack kicked Kayla out. I wanted to hold her, tell her how much she meant to me. I wanted her so badly I would have taken her right then on the kitchen floor if I could. But I knew I had to wait until the kids were in bed. Then I remembered. Brooke had been angry with me when I left for Denver. Was she still upset? Was she still carrying that with her? Maybe this wouldn't be the welcome home I was hoping for. Maybe tonight would be about making amends, about asking her to forgive me for being too harsh, for expecting her to confront Kayla. I thought about the married guys I knew at work, always bragging about who they'd hooked up with on trips. I never joined in, but I never said anything either. In that way, I guess I'd been no better than Brooke, silent, watching it happen. I'd gone after her not just to get her to act, but to make her see what could happen. I'd used Kayla's behavior as a cautionary tale. But knowing now that Brooke never once considered crossing that line, I realized I had no justification for how I treated her. And I knew I could never tell her what was really driving me. All I could do was apologize and hope it was enough. But there was still something else weighing on me, what I had done behind the scenes. I had someone follow Kayla, document everything, and send it to Jack anonymously. I tore apart their marriage to save mine. Sure, Kayla got exposed and Jack learned the truth, but was that the right way? Should I have gone to Kayla directly? Given her a chance to stop? I said it out loud. I did what I had to do to protect my marriage, and I'd do it again. I felt a pang of guilt for Jack, but Kayla's actions were her own. She never gave any indication she was planning to stop. I was sitting on the couch in the living room when I heard the garage door begin to open. I hesitated. Should I get up to greet Brooke and the kids in the kitchen, or just wait here? I stayed where I was. But then something felt off. No sudden burst of energy. No running or yelling. Molly and Kyle always came through the door like a storm. Another minute passed, still nothing. I turned toward the kitchen and saw Brooke standing quietly in the doorway watching me. "Where are the kids tonight?" I asked. "They're spending the night at my folks'," Brooke said. "School's out tomorrow for a teacher planning day so they can sleep in." She wore a sharp white skirt paired with a rich burgundy blouse. That color had always brought out something striking in her. I'd thought so for years. "You look incredible," I told her. She gave me a knowing smile. "I wore this blouse because I knew you'd love it." Right then, a strange kind of peace settled over me, like the chaos of the past few days might finally quiet down. Brooke stepped in close, stopping just short of touching me. "There's something I need to say," she began, her tone measured. Please, let me get through it before you respond. She paused, inhaling deeply. I've been mulling over everything you said last week. I don't think it fully sank in until now. I had to put a stop to what Kayla was doing. Part of me always knew she'd eventually be caught in her own web. I've felt this weight of guilt ever since, and I'm sorry for all the arguing we did because of it. You don't need to apologize, I said. I didn't handle things the right way either. Kayla was like a sister to you, and coming to terms with what she was doing to Jack, it wasn't simple. If the situation were reversed, I doubt I would have handled it any better. What made it so confusing was that they were both close to us, she continued. What Kayla did filled me with rage, but I turned that anger on you. That wasn't fair. And I think you did the same, I said gently. You lashed out at me because you didn't know what else to do with the hurt. It's tragic what happened between them, but we can't let it poison what we have. I reached out and took her hand, pulling her into my arms. I love you more than I know how to say, I whispered. I tried to stay upset, but when you didn't call Monday, it stung more than I thought it would. That's when it clicked, Brooke said. You told me it was their mess, not ours to carry. She let out a quiet, bittersweet laugh. Still, we've got something of our own to deal with, don't we? I eased back just enough to meet her eyes. And how exactly are we supposed to have a baby, I said, if we never actually make love? Her face softened before lighting up with that warm, familiar grin of hers. In that case, she said with a playful lilt, you'd better get moving, mister. And so we did. By the time the sun came up, Brooke was already downstairs. I tugged on a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, then wandered into the kitchen in search of coffee. That night turned out to be our only chance for a while. Life came rushing back, work, the kids, family obligations. It all conspired to keep us apart. But a few weeks later, the test confirmed it. Brooke was pregnant,